This week on Behind the Pulpit, Pastor Bob and Pastor Dave join us today for a lightning round of Behind the Pulpit. We will jump into the news and we will discuss Pastor Dave's sermon on Luke chapter 19 and the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. You're not going to want to miss a single moment of today's shorter episode of Behind the Pulpit. Wherever you may be watching or listening to this today, we hope you're having a wonderful day. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy this abbreviated edition of Behind the Pulpit.
Hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Pulpit for July the 8th, 2024. We are here. We are loving it. It is hot. We just finished day one of VBS, and it's a sweaty Behind the Pulpit today. What do you think about that, Pastor Dave?
I had a great time at pickup and drop off today, although it was about 95 degrees. Thank you guys for serving with VBS. Day one is over. It's in the books. We are scuba diving. We're having an adventure. 167 kids, 100 volunteers.
It was a lot of noise.
We got Tim wearing his purple shirt. Is purple the right color for
lavender?
The VBS?
I think that's lavender.
It's like
T-shirts this year.
I don't know if what's the word, like puce?
Puce.
It's like a light.
Did you just
purple.
say you're wearing a puce shirt?
I forget what. I think this. I'm gonna look this up right now.
It's a wonderful
you do
VBS, and it's going to be a great week of ministry.
By the way, I loved the we had the closing session, and you had a mobile camera that actually followed Johnny up into the balcony.
Yep, that was
Johnny's
Johnny's idea. That was pretty good. This is basically puce.
Felt big time.
Puce.
I didn't even know that was a color.
This is the color puce.
You learn something new every day.
Very
puce.
good.
I'm gonna go with lavender. Puce just doesn't sit right with me.
Okay. You have a camera
cancel
on you,
that color.
Tim. We should ask the audience what they think of this.
They would have seen me in the introduction.
Oh yeah. So what do you guys think? What do we call that?
That's
Puce?
right. So in the comments section, let us know, what do you think about Tim's shirt, and should puce be a color?
Yeah.
We'll have to spell it in the comments. All right. Anyway, we're glad you're here today. We got a lightning show today because we got lots going on. This is going to be a short Behind the Pulpit, and so we're just going to kind of get right into it. I got three things. I got an agenda here, Pastor.
Wait a minute. Have you ever worn this shirt before on Behind the Pulpit?
You are taking the train off the track. I have not. This is the first time.
Check it out,
and
guys.
These
Look
are
at that.
new shirts. I'm trying to get Mark to develop an online NBC merch store. So I think that's coming. So this is exclusive for staff right now.
These are the first edition blue polos, and notice the logo. And comfort-wise, how are you feeling?
This shirt is so. I've worn it 4 times already this week. It's amazing. Did you try yours on?
Not yet.
I think you'll be quite pleased.
I was on vacation, but I heard the shirts came in while I was out, and I'm looking forward to trying mine out maybe tomorrow.
All right. Well, good.
I'll wear mine on Sunday.
Look forward to wearing you. Hey, so speaking of that,
if you want an NBC shirt, just like and subscribe, and we can tell you how to get one.
Like and subscribe somewhere around here.
That's not where there. bottom right of your screen.
There we go.
There you go.
All right. So anyway, one of my agenda points, though, Pastor Dave, was to talk quickly about your vacation. You were not here last week. I was here with the Vosters. We were talking about Cambodia, and you were somewhere Cambodia-like, weren't you?
Well, the Jersey Shore is a wonderful, people make fun of New Jersey, like, they only think of Newark or Camden.
Don't even get me started.
But there is some beautiful parts to New Jersey. So just south of Point Pleasant, there's a little stretch of sand known as Bay Head. It's the top of the bay there. And we had a wonderful week, good time with the family. And we had a surprise visit. We were there with my wife and my 2 daughters, Michaela and Felicity. And then about halfway through the week, my oldest daughter, Alexandria, surprised us, showed up. There was a coup d'etat. There was scheming between her and her grandfather to go get her at the airport.
Wow.
He was pretending to go do some other errand, and then he shows back up with my older daughter from Atlanta, where she lives right now.
Okay.
And so there was much screaming and rejoicing. I have a picture of her, if Tim can drop it in. Many of you don't realize that I actually have an older daughter because she doesn't live in New Jersey.
Because she's older.
That's a picture of Alexandria. And she, of course, is married to my son-in-law, Tim, down in Atlanta and at law school at Emory. But it was great to spend time with her and have a good vacation. We had good weather, very mild weather. I think like mid-70s pretty much the whole week.
Okay, good for you.
A lot of good beach time.
It was not mid-70s up here, Pastor Dave.
I did get some sun. You'll notice a little color in Pastor Dave coming back. And, I got some vitamin D.
Are you orange?
A little bit.
I feel like your shirt is like a sunburn diagram.
Yeah,
you have like
absolutely.
winter, good tan,
true.
and then
This
different
is right.
shades of sunburn. Like if you're
That's
in
right.
those top two, you're in trouble. You might be.
Normally
should
you're
see
the
a
bottom.
doctor.
Normally you're pasty white, the bottom color right there. But you've moved up the chart.
I moved
right
up. Yeah, it's July, so we're having
There's
some
a
fun.
chart for that.
there. Your shirt is a chart.
My shirt is a chart. I can't get away from charts.
By the way, you missed last Sunday when we did the parable of the 10 minas, and I had several charts for you as well as people on the stage.
Well, I did
was your-
watch online, and I thought
Okay.
the sermon was awesome. I appreciated the volunteers there.
That's right.
I understand there was a little bit of jockeying for getting to be the volunteer, at
There
least in the
was.
second service. But it was cool to see Mr. Bonaventura is now.
I went in
known as
right away
the-
Sunday morning. I said, I need your help. And I
Yeah.
said, I need you to be the nobleman. And he goes, okay.
He was an
No
excellent
pushback.
nobleman. Yeah,
He just wanted to be on stage.
yeah. I saw you move him from your left side to your right side there.
I did.
And,
That's right.
It was a great sermon. Good message about the minas, and I appreciated it. And I saw the charts. So
You
very,
did.
very
Well,
good job.
Dave loves a good chart. Well, we're glad that you're back.
Good to be
today
back. Good to go
talk.
away. Good to be back.
And we're gonna dive into your sermon. That's my my third agenda point here in today. But I'm glad you got a little bit of time away. That you were hanging out and the return of Alex was since we're in Luke. Did you kill a fattened calf?
Yeah,
For when
yeah.
she came home and
Well-
spread that on the table, or
It was much rejoicing. We did do a lot of eating on vacation, so we do like to celebrate in that
Oh,
way.
good.
So
All right.
Alex actually is a great cook, so she kind of jumped
she
in the kitchen
flew
and took over.
up and she cooked for you. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that's the first agenda point. Dave was on vacation. He's back. The return of the Dave. Now we're going to talk about what's going on in the news. All right, so a couple news stories this week. We have exited the month of Pride. We're now into July, but yet there's some adjacent stories I think that we maybe should mention. I know you wanted to mention one as well, Pastor Dave. Caught my attention this week. I was listening to another podcast called Think Biblically. That's out of Biola University with Sean McDowell and Scott Ray. Sean's an apologist. Scott is an ethicist. And one of the stories they covered was in our neck of the woods. And here's a headline from the National Catholic Register. New York legislature seeks to require Catholic private schools to recognize preferred pronouns. So, there is a law making its way through the, I don't know what they call it up there in New York. We have an assembly here. I don't know if they also have an assembly. The state Senate looks like it's starting it. It's called the Non-Public Dignity for All Students Act, which would threaten to require Catholic schools to recognize chosen gender identities that may contradict a student's biological sex. Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York raised the alarm on the proposed legislation in an article published in Compact magazine last week. I'll just finish this. Cardinal Dolan writes that the proposed legislation would force us to deny the inherent difference between boys and girls, thus leaving New York Catholic schools vulnerable to discrimination lawsuits for enforcing male and female bathroom policies, sports teams, and uniforms on the basis of biological sex. So this is sort of the issue of our day. It seems to be coming up, and I think a lot of people don't realize how it touches so many different spheres of life. And of course the issue here is, which is a concerning issue, that if this law somehow can be foisted upon religious schools that would have objections to this based on religious convictions, certainly we would have that too based on scriptures that we hold to be the authority and the supreme truth that is out there. So this is quite concerning. I don't know, have you heard about this, Pastor Dave, or is this news to you today?
This is news to me today, but I would be concerned on two levels. So there is a religious liberty concern. Does a Catholic school
There we go.
have a legal right to teach a certain way and, hold to a certain worldview without being impinged upon by legislature? That's a problem. And then I think there's another issue here that sometimes even Christians wrestle with, and we're talking about the topic of pronoun hospitality. So some people have different views on whether or not this is appropriate for Christians to practice pronoun hospitality. And, we're starting to see this more and more. I was just showing you, if you guys have an iPhone, you'll notice if you like log into your profile and click information, and if you want to change any of your name or that kind of thing, there's actually now a new field. I think it was added a few months ago for your pronouns. You can add your pronouns right there in
we
your
just
iPhone.
Discovered this before the show started today.
Yeah, so that's like
snuck it in, just kind of went right in.
This stuff is sort of everywhere. It's on our devices, and now it's apparently part of a Catholic school issue. So there's kind of two different issues. You may remember Christopher Yuan actually talked about this. I think he might have fielded an audience question, or maybe it was a prepared question about should we be practicing pronoun hospitality, and he gave a firm no because it was his desire to speak the truth in love, and he said a lie, even if told in love, is still a lie. So he didn't think that was appropriate biblically to practice that. And he was saying the way to work around that is everyone has a first name. You can simply use their given name without necessarily having to compromise your conscience and refer to them as a gender that you do not necessarily affirm. So I thought that was pretty good advice from Dr. Yuan when he came. Different people have different ways of handling that, but it's a concerning news story. Yeah,
it's certainly a good point from the religious liberty perspective of the government kind of forcing you to do this. And are there repercussions? Is there going to be lawsuits if you can't live out your convictions, not just in the privacy of your home, but in public life? Mm-hmm. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian author, has a well-known quote, which is, "We should seek to live not by lies." And he was speaking to Christians, I think, in the initial iteration of that, and talking about his experience in communist Russia. So that's been a quote that's been thrown out there, that we should be, as Christians, people of the truth, and truth, wedded with love, but still be people of the truth. And so it's a difficult needle to thread nowadays, and this is another example of that happening. Speaking on those lines, Dave, the Supreme Court actually was finishing up their term at the end of June, as they usually do, and there was two cases we wanted to mention. Going along with this topic, I'll first mention a case that the Supreme Court has not decided yet, but has taken up. They have agreed to hear what is potentially a landmark case on gender-affirming care. So this is the gender transition surgeries, specifically, I think, for minors and others. The case is going to be called the United States versus Scrametti, and it's coming from various trans-identifying individuals. So this is going to be an interesting next term, and these people are suing the state of Tennessee, and we're going to see what the Supreme Court says. They're going to weigh in on this. So that's coming up, and that kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. Another Supreme Court case that came up, not necessarily related to that, but also is very important, was the Chevron Defence case.
Yeah, I was dialoguing about this case with my daughter who's in law school, and she said arguably this is the most politically significant case that we've had a decision on in many, many years. Of course, Chevron was the precedent for like 40 years. Mm-hmm. And so basically what that meant was that the government, even though it's set up in such a way that the Congress is supposed to be the ones who legislate and make laws, the government is set up in such a way that Congress can delegate out the authority to these administrative agencies, such as the APA. There's a bunch of them. And then those agencies are the ones that actually make policy. They don't necessarily refer to it as policy, but they're the ones who enforce those laws. So there was a case, actually it was in New Jersey, there were some fishermen, and they had a law where the fishermen were obliged, because of the administrative agency, to bring along someone on their fishing trips to monitor the amount of fish that they were catching as they went out. And these fishermen were having a rough financial year, and they could no longer afford to bring on this monitor and pay them. You have to pay them. And so they chose not to be bringing on this mandated monitor, and then they were basically given fines every single day. I think it was like $700 a day or something like that for not abiding by this standard. So that case made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and that's the case where they knocked down Chevron deference for good. So basically what that means is the Congress has to now make laws again. So it's Andrew Walker.
Shocking that they should do what they were elected to do.
Yeah, Andrew Walker had a tweet. He said either Chevron Deference is dead or the Constitution is dead, but you can only pick one. And I thought that was a good way to package it together, because the Constitution is erected in such a way that the Congress is supposed to legislate. Now, the other side of that is that the people in these agencies are the experts. These are the people with master's degrees in science, and these are the people that actually know what's best in those specific fields, and people in Congress may not necessarily have the education needed. But those people will still work there. They'll still be in those agencies, and they'll still have a job. It just won't be in their purview to be enforcing those regulations anymore. Now that's going to have to come through Congress. That's a pretty big shift, but maybe a move back toward our original strict constructionist sort of constitutional reading.
But didn't this also have to do with if there was a case that came up that the Supreme Court didn't want to take a firm stance on, they would just claim Chevron deference, which is what had been decided before. Well, that's stare decisis.
Yeah,
they would appeal to this so that they wouldn't have to make certain decisions, right?
Right. So where there was any lack of clarity in the regulation, the Congress could just say, well, just do whatever the administrative agency says you should do, rather than Congress actually telling us what the laws should be. So that's now a thing of the past, and we'll see how this works. Some people say the world is going to be a less safe place because these agencies will have less oversight and sort of authority. We'll see. I think time will tell how this case shakes out, but pretty big deal in the news.
Good. All right, so that's what's going on in the news. Back here on the home front, we have our first sermon in our last section of Luke's Gospel that Pastor Dave delivered yesterday. You kicked off the final week of Jesus. We finished up Luke 19. We're going to be beginning Luke 20. We're going to start into Luke 20 next week, and that's going to take us in the home stretch in the Gospel, and we're going to finish on Labor Day. We've been in Luke for a while. How do you feel now that we're in the final stretch? We're coming towards the... we've entered the city. We're getting to the cross. We're going to eventually get to the resurrection. It's been quite a journey.
This is what it's all about. I think a lot of times the Gospels have a disproportionate amount of week. Someone once said, some scholar once said that the Gospels... It's
almost like that last week is important.
Yeah, something like that. Someone once said that the Gospels are really passion narratives with extended introductions. Right, so up until now, it's really just been an introduction to who this Jesus is and what he's come to do, and now he's actually going to do it. And so it's familiar text, familiar territory. We talk about this around Easter time. It's a little weird to be talking about it in July. So I actually said, we did cover this
Easter in July, Pastor Dave.
Palm Sunday just felt like not the right July 7th passage, but here we are. There's a lot here, and so I enjoyed revisiting these topics and these texts for this weekend.
Well, very good. Well, you got us into the Triumphant Entry, the money changers. Pastor Dave, you were slamming the pulpit. I thought it was going to break yesterday.
I hope I didn't scare you with that there, Pastor
Actually,
Bob.
In the first service, I think I was looking at something, and then I was like, whoa.
You got me for the first
Dave's
one.
Dave's getting angry.
You know that scene in the movie Elf where Will Ferrell goes, he's an angry elf? That's kind of what I was thinking about myself after I did that.
I think you missed the height requirement.
So, did you happen to see the recap video that Noah did for... Noah, his signature move now is to make fire come out of places.
We'll see.
And there was one shot in there where you were hitting that pulpit like this, and it just kept...
Yeah.
And then I referenced the text, and the text was shooting up fire like July 4th.
Yeah. Well, maybe Noah can do that. But,
I think you're going to... Not in my house!
I was thinking about getting
a nuclear explosion in the next one.
A whole booth or a whole money changer table with like baskets and buckets of coins and stuff, and then just flipping the whole thing over. But I thought,
whoa, that might have made it into the top prop for
accidentally hit somebody with a coin or something. I don't know. So I backed away.
I got plastic ones.
Yeah. But I do think we should really visit the fact that Jesus was emotionally triggered and angry by that. So I tried to bring a little heat just to help us to feel.
It was appropriate. It was appropriate. So why don't you walk us through a little bit of your thinking on this message? Why did you focus on the things that you focused on? And you had the Maccabeus coming in on his war horse, and we had pigs getting slaughtered in the temple with Antiochus Epiphanes.
We did. Yeah, so the end of Luke 19 follows on the heels of the parable of the minas, and it's interesting if you read those two passages in parallel, there's a lot of similarities there. It's almost like the story sets up the reality, which occurs at the end of the chapter. So you have the famous triumphal entry. Jesus is entering into Jerusalem. Interestingly, Luke does not mention palm branches at all. He only mentions the cloaks. Luke goes into great detail about this donkey that's borrowed, and at first you're like, how come Jesus is just taking this other person's donkey? But that was customary for a dignitary to demand that. The other gospel writers do tell us that he returned it. And so he's coming in, and they're praising him as the son of David who's going to be blessed as he on Jerusalem. There's a lot of emotions in this passage. Jesus is very open and transparent with how he's feeling. At first, he's deeply grieved. The word is for sobbing or wailing. And then he enters into the temple, and he does not feel impressed whatsoever in what he finds there. So though it's a beautiful building, he's more concerned with the internals, and they had converted God's holy temple into a den of robbers.
Yeah.
And he's not happy about that. So the passage kind of fits together in a way that Darrell Bock says it's this scene that really triggers the beginning of the end. These two incidences that he's coming in, riding in like a royal dignitary, and then number two, he's making a scene in the temple. At that point, the Pharisees and the other religious leaders realize we've got to do something about this rabble-rouser Jesus, and the plots and the betrayal start at the beginning of this week. So it was a good reminder about these key passages. There's a lot of truth here, and it's wonderful to see our coming King and just see all that he came to do and came to fulfill in terms of prophecy and so forth. So,
yeah. You know, it reminded me of, as you were going through it, we had preached through Ezra and Nehemiah in the fall, and it reminded me of that scene where Nehemiah throws Tobiah out of the temple.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting, was that Nehemiah 7? I have to go back and look at the exact reference. But cleansing the temple, getting people out of there. You know, they don't belong there. So that's pretty cool. So you talked a lot in the message about what did Jesus save us from? Like, why did Jesus save us? Why did you choose to kind of focus on that in this, and what was the point you were making there?
yeah, I wanted to focus on the theme of worship, and then why do we worship? Because Jesus saves us. Well, what does he save us exactly from? And I think there is some misunderstandings about this. Some people would say Jesus saves us in this life from difficulty, from trials, from sicknesses. Some of the more health and wealth prosperity teachers would say that that's what he came to do, that there was atonement benefits for physical healing made on the cross. And so I don't think that's an appropriate expectation. I think there's some really clear expectations given by Jesus about the fact that we will face difficulties and suffering in this life, and then our hope is actually in the age to come. So it's not about necessarily those benefits this time, this coming, but this coming was primarily focused on a soteriological purpose, his salvation that he gave us, that's freedom from the penalty of sin. I think that's important to recognize. That's the primary reason why Jesus came. That's the whole purpose of Luke's gospel. That's how he seeks and saves the lost. And that's where Luke chooses to focus his attention on in the narrative, and I think that's what Jesus came to do.
Yeah.
Now, though they were talking about how Jesus came to save us, I don't think even then they had a clear understanding of what all that meant till after the fact.
Right.
And so we need to get clear on that, because if we're not clear on that and we expect Jesus to be saving us from all other adversities in life, when he doesn't, because he, those things will come. Instead of running to Christ for worship and receiving his comfort and peace, we'll run away from him in anger and in disappointment with God. And that's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose to focus on that.
It's a good word. The other thing that I was wondering if we could dialogue a little bit about, this middle section where Jesus is weeping over Jerusalem, and I didn't get to talk about this much last week, but I mentioned it in my sermon, and you brought it up here too, was this coming destruction of Jerusalem that's going to happen in AD 70.
I saw you even had a picture.
I had a pretty.
I
was pretty
Jerusalem
proud. I was
was
very
on
proud
fire.
of that picture. It was being razed to the ground.
It was. That's really what happened.
Yeah. But in the preparation for that, I didn't get to mention that he is, of course, here weeping. There's a lot in these two passages about Jesus making these predictions that he knows what he's doing, but a lot of other people don't. Like you're saying about the point you just made. So, why is it that why is it that he's so focusing on this? Why is he weeping over Jerusalem? Why is this kind of have a prominent place in this last section here? Your enemies are going to set up a barricade. You're going to be surrounded. They're going to hem you in. Like, what is he saying about? Is he just speaking to his audience back then, or is there a word for us here, a warning for us here?
I think it's both and, right? So in the immediate sense, he knows what's coming. Within that generation, they will experience a horror. Now, can I do my book recommendation now? So we didn't get a chance to do this. I'll just weave it in here.
You bring it in here, man.
The Great Book War is on with a big one today, guys.
I'm not fighting. You win.
If
you
you're
win on this one.
interested, that's pretty thick, man. So Josephus, first century historian. This is not a book that you read like on the beach. This is not like a cover-to-cover book either. Yeah. It's a reference work, and inside of this work are a variety of different books that Josephus, the Jewish historian, wrote in the first century. It actually testifies to the fact that Jesus was a real historical figure. He talks about Jesus in here. What he also does is he talks about that whole Maccabean revolt that occurred in 165 BC, and he talks about the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 in detail. And so this is a place where you could go to see, did Jesus' predictions come true? Josephus records exactly what happened to Jerusalem in AD 70 and how the Roman general Titus came and surrounded it, besieged it. Actually, about 100,000 Jews were taken captive, and a couple 100,000 people died during the war on the Jews that the Romans waged in AD 70. And so there was destruction of the walls, there was war upon the Jewish people, and then there was also a burning and a razing of the city afterward. Josephus details all of that if you're interested to know fulfilled prophecy. Jesus was a prophet. Now, what you may not know is that Jesus had told his disciples that this was coming. He warned them. Right here in this passage, also in other places like in Luke chapter 21, which we'll get to in a couple weeks. So there weren't any Christians in Jerusalem when the Romans came. They saw this coming, and they fled to the hills, just like Jesus told them to flee. And so I think there might have been a couple Christians there, but by and large, the Christians left town and did not experience the suffering that came upon Jerusalem in this way. So they took Jesus' words seriously and escaped the coming horror that was coming upon the Jewish people. But this made Jesus grieve. This made him lament. This made him break down with tears of compassion, knowing this was coming. This was going to be the end of the era of the Jewish age. We talk about eschatology and the end of the age. This was the end of their age. This was their eschaton. And so the temple was destroyed, pointing to and privileging the new temple, the body of Christ, and how God is at work in today's day and age, putting aside the Jewish age once and for all. And it's never been recreated since then. So this made Jesus lament and brought out tears of compassion, which is interestingly to think about the Lord and his humanity and how these emotions came welling up at the end for him, knowing everything that was coming. So B.B. Warfield has a great book called The Emotional Life of the Lord. It's about 100 years old, but he talks about these different emotions that Jesus shows, and we saw two of them in our text today. This deep lament and also this intense zeal and anger. And Jesus, being a perfect man of passion, did not have any sinful emotions, but yet they were very real. And so we saw that on full display in our text.
What's also cool about the text is that, so that's Jesus speaking to his disciples at the time, but Luke was recording this later on, so Jesus is giving this at like 30 AD. Luke is recording this, later on
probably in the 60s.
And then people are reading it probably slightly after AD 70, and they read this and they think, oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
This just happened.
Right. Now, if you're a skeptical person, which, like, if you go to Duke Divinity School or Princeton or something like that, they're going to say there's no way. There's no way he predicted all that. And so Luke couldn't have written that.
So this had to have been written later. Right?
Had to be written later, so Luke's dated later because obviously this is like clear predictive prophecy. Or you could just take the Bible at face value and believe that there is such a thing as a supernatural world and believe that Jesus really is the Son of God and believe that he can actually predict the future. He did fulfill prophecies in the past. And so we take those words literally and seriously, and we take them as Jesus' words. And how else do you explain the fact that the Christians knew and escaped the city if these words didn't occur prior to them coming to pass? So I think that's a good argument for the fact that this is a piece of historical reality. There's historicity to it. So
Good. Well, thanks for the good word. You got us into the city now.
we're here.
This upcoming week, we are actually kind of regressing because we have a parable. I think this actually is the final parable in Luke, the parable of the wicked tenants. And Clint Watkins is going to be with us preaching this week.
All right, Brother Clint.
He's going to be here next Monday for Behind the Pulpit.
He's staying over.
He's staying over, doing some. He's making the rounds while he's here. So watch out. He might be coming for you.
It's always good to have Clint with us, and I look forward to that.
Yeah, so that'll be good. And then you're doing the Olivet Discourse the week after that, right?
It is on July 28th.
Oh, actually,
there might
no.
be something
I'm
in
doing
between.
something before, and then you're doing. I have to go back and look at what I'm doing, but that's right.
Yeah.
We got some text coming up.
We got some really rich passages in the Gospel of Luke, so I'm glad we extended it. We could spend a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But we hope that you're enjoying this study of the great Gospel of Luke. It's such a big gospel.
It is. It's a big gospel.
Yeah. It's like wrapping your arms around an elephant or something.
All right.
Luke, man. Whew. We're almost there, though. We made it to chapter 20 this week.
We did. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll get you some water because it's about to get hot for the rest of the summer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we finish up today? I'm going to make an executive decision to skip the theology sprint because we're doing a shortened version today, and we're just going to.
I'll save it for next week.
Go to Body Life. That's right. Especially since I got this Josephus book hanging right here. Let's talk about what's coming up. So we just had Summer Connections. We're in the middle of VBS. What else is happening later this summer? You could subscribe to the e-news, and if you want to find out what's going on, so check that out. I guess the big thing that's coming up in August is the Night of Revival. So you want to drop that in? Do you want to
I'll drop
remind
that.
us of the details here of that, Pastor Tim?
Jeez.
August 16th.
August 16th.
Coming up. Bring a friend this year.
We're going to have the Revival Band will be back. It was awesome last time. Noah's going to be back for another awesome message. For those of you who don't know what the Night of Revival is, we meet on a Friday night, and we have a lot of worship. And we just spend time together worshiping God. And we want people to come and bring a friend. So we're starting a promotion campaign called Bring a Friend. If you were at the event last time or you want to go, come. But we want you to bring someone with you as well. So looking forward to see you guys there.
That's wonderful.
Who's your friend?
Good question. By the way, it is just to be clear, it is going to be inside, right? Inside.
This will be inside. We have incredible speakers.
I
lights,
can't tell you how many
air conditioning.
Great. I can't tell you how many texts and questions I got yesterday. The tent is outside. Are we doing our worship service outside yesterday? And I said no.
Our friend John Bonaventura made a very
even
bold,
our worship leader wasn't
very
sure.
bold statement.
He saw the tent and he started getting a little bit confused.
I missed something.
What's
I missed
going
something.
on? Did I miss an email?
Thank the Lord we were not outside yesterday.
I think it was 95 yesterday.
It's
I don't
been
even
hot.
think the tent
It's been a
got
hot
used
summer,
for
I will say
Summer
that.
Connections.
All right. Do we have anything else? Am I missing anything?
I got one more.
All right. What is it? Shepherd's Freezer. Pastor Dave, tell us about the food.
I'd like to jump in the shepherd's freezer and cool down a little bit. But there's no room because we're going to stock it with all of your food. Pick up a container and you can cook a meal for someone in need, perhaps who's gone through some sort of medical issue or just could use a loving hand. We hope that you'll take advantage of that. And also, if you do have a need for a meal or two, that's what that's there for. Please do not hesitate to take advantage of the Shepherd's Freezer Ministry. We want that thing to be... we want those hinges swinging on that freezer, and we want it to be used. And so if you don't cook, then you can pick up a meal from like a Costco type of thing, and that'll be acceptable too. Or you can show us your culinary school skills and let us know.
And that'll be acceptable.
What you'd like to.
Yeah. I'll receive that.
Very good.
By the way, I think that could be, if you want to create a Shepherd's Freezer T-shirt, I think your line right there could be the line on the shirt. We want those hinges swing.
Imagine a church where
That's
all of
right,
our
imagine the
Shepherd's
church.
Freezer
He
church.
He did it. You heard
freezers.
yesterday. He goes.
He did it for the second service.
Let's
He
be that
put
church.
it back in.
Let's be
I love
that
it.
church. All right.
I
Thank
can't
you, Pastor
properly
Dave.
end a sermon without saying, "Let's be that church."
I feel
it's just not over.
I have to come up with a standard line now. I don't have one.
You gotta do it.
All right. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for joining us for Behind the Pulpit today. The short version. We will be back next week with Clint, and then we're going to do 2 more weeks after that, and then we're taking a break for August until we start our fall series. So gobble up your Behind the Pulpit for the next few weeks before it's gone and refreshed. I think we might actually finally be moving into season 3, season
3.
4.
It'll be 3 when we get back. Incredible.
All right. All right. We'll see you next week.
Let's be that church.
Let's